Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are starting our session now. My name is Tembegile Felicia Makubele, and I am the host for the Are We Transforming? This is a platform where we provide or sort of give an opportunity to different types of people within South Africa and also in Africa to engage with us on different topics. And today we are having one of the well-known authors, Armande Kruger. I saw a topic on one of the platforms, and I got interested in understanding exactly what is it that the topic that he was talking about relates to. So I engaged with him and invited him, and he agreed. Thank you so much, Armande, for making time. And I would not do the introduction. I would allow you to do the full introduction regarding who you are, and then you can proceed to the presentation, as we call it. And then after that, people are going to ask questions or engage or sort of, ask clarity-seeking questions. But otherwise, we welcome you, and we hope to learn quite a lot from the engagement and also from the book that you have written. So without any waste of time, people will join, and those that are going to watch the video are going to actually get to understand what and who you are and what are you all about and the topic there. So I'll hand over to you for you to take us through.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time. I appreciate the invite. I think in terms of maybe linking this up to how are we transforming, maybe just to give you a bit of background in terms of where it all comes from. I'm probably a bit of a strange animal in the sense that I started off my studies in law and ended up in technology by pure chance because I needed to fund my studies. So I then stayed there, and over the years have grown from being a programmer to being an IT manager, and then I landed up in a services company where we basically provided technology services to our clients, and I think it's somewhere there where we at some point realized that we need to ensure that there was a shortage in terms of technology skills, and we needed to try and bring young people into the technology space. And what happened is we put on an advert for young people, and we needed to have about 10 to 20 people in the company, new people in the company. So the first thing that happened is we received thousands and thousands of CVs, and we had to work through these CVs in order to cut it down to maybe 50 people, which the time allowed for us to interview. And during that interview process, I really, it became a very heartfelt story because you realized how many people were out there that probably are qualified, but just are unable to find work because there is just not enough work out there. So during what was normally the normal process for interviewing people, became a process whereby I tried to mentor people while I'm interviewing them, even if we were not going to employ them in the company. Because what I wanted to try and make sure of is that every time that I see someone that I cannot employ, that I leave them in a better space in terms of the next interview that they go to. But it never really felt like enough. You think about a starting point of 1,000 people or more, and you end up employing 10 of those people in your company. And in the back of my mind, the whole time I'm thinking, what happens to the other 990 or more that's still out there, which really there's no reason why they shouldn't be employed. So we've gone through those iterations a few times, and every time it sort of built up a bit more of a concern within myself to try and find a solution to make sure that we don't end up in a situation like that. I look at countries like the UK, for instance, where they have a problem because their unemployment rate is too low. they can't find people, yet we sit in South Africa with people that come from varsity and have a degree, and they cannot find employment. So I went through my career. I really tried to help young people, not only during the interview process, but also within the departments that I worked in, to make sure that I mentor these young people, because they obviously come in with very little experience, and often you would find, because of their little experience, in their early days they would make mistakes, and unless you're aware of where these people come from and how hard it was for them to find employment in the first place, you might just discount them and start penalizing them for the mistakes in the same way you would do it for anybody else that has more experience. So it was really a passion of mine to ensure that these people get equipped to stay within a company rather than try and penalize them for every mistake that they make. And I went through many years in my career with the thought in the back of my mind that there must be a better way of doing this. So around 2019, I thought that I'm running out of time, and I need to do something drastically about it. I found that within the corporate environment, even though I can do a few things, and I can help some people, I couldn't really do it at scale. So I founded a company at the time, and the objective, as I stated it, was to eradicate unemployment in South Africa over the next decade, which is quite a bold statement, and probably people would look at it, not probably, a few people looked at it and thought that I'm completely crazy, because the numbers are just so huge. I mean, if you talk about 7-8 million people that are unemployed, and you talk about an economy that's in a down spiral, where exactly are you going to find work for these people? But there are a few things that I noticed during my employment, and also in the time that I spent within the recruitment space, that I see almost as flaws within the system that prevents a lot of good people. I'm just going to switch off my video for 1 second, because I'm not sure whether it might impact quality. I just thought that there must be a better way to make sure that people find employment, especially if they want jobs. You might find people there that have become so hopeless that they're not interested anymore, and we need to find solutions for them as well. But especially if you find people that has gone from a school career, exhausted funds from either their family or friends, or loans that they've taken out to go through varsity, and then once they've finished, they can't find employment. It has to be fixed. So the approach from my side was that, firstly, we probably find ourselves in almost like an overeducated space, where our focus for the last 10-20 years has been on education, which is extremely important, but to educate without a home for someone once they finish is it just defeats the whole purpose. So what the company, the intention was for us to create opportunities. That was the key thing. So we need to look at and one of the things that we stated is that a core principle for us was dignity. The approach would have been, or the approach is, that if you have someone that's in need of an income, they need food on the table, they need a roof over their head, they need to send their children to schools, all of that costs money. And one thing to approach this is to say, well, since you're unemployed, there's an onus on the government to supply you with the means to do all those things. But that really does not provide any dignity. Dignity really comes from the ability to provide for yourself or for your family. So the focus from our side would have been to ensure that we give people jobs. And even if those jobs start at a very low income level, the moment you create a sense of hope in people, then their aspirations, and that becomes much better. If you have somebody that's been unemployed for 10 years and have been begging for money, received charity income, grants from the state, they might be in a position where where they say to themselves that there's no better way than this. There's no hope for me. I'm not going to end up. I can look at other people that have got stuff, but I really am not. I have no hope anymore that I would ever get to that space. The moment I put you in a position where you are actually working for your money, and you see that there's the potential to increase that income if you start doing more, or you get yourself educated more, or you improve the quality of your output, whatever those means might be. So the drive from the company that was founded, and it's gone through a few name changes over the time, the company called I Help You. Our objective is this, and it's very simple. Firstly, we somehow have to address the issue that whenever a vacancy is advertised today in a company, that vacancy almost exclusively will be filled by somebody that already has a job. Now, again, that defeats the purpose. I mean, you can't, if you look at vacancies within this country and whether they currently stand at any point in time, and whether they stand at 14,000 or 15,000 vacancies, I can promise you, if you take the growth part out of it, when you come back next year, you would still have the same amount of vacancies, because employing a person, for your company that's got a vacancy from a company that where the person's already employed only means that you create a vacancy in that company again. So the first thing is we have to get a mindset change where companies need to think long term. They need to invest in the future, even if their impact is negative in the short run. But you have to look at the pool of people that are unemployed currently when you try and fill your vacancies. And whichever way, and it's possible to structure it, there has just not been an incentive up to this point for anybody to do it. But there's a way to structure your internal workings to make sure that you feed the system from the bottom up. And if you're really, really serious about providing employment in this country, you will make it work. There's no reason for people to wait until there's some kind of regulation in place that forces you to do these kind of things. We have to think long term. And one of the other statements that I've made a few times over is that whatever you invest today to better the unemployment situation in our country will come back in the long run and reap benefits for you as a company. Whether you're a retail company or bank, financial institution, doesn't matter. The fact that there are 7 million people out there that have no income now and that are unemployed means that if you do something from your side to get them employed, those people eventually turn out to be your customers. So the benefit in the long run, it benefits everybody in the long run. And I think that was the key thing for us, is to devise structures, processes, incentives to provide advice in terms of what can be done to address this kind of thing. Whether there are many ideas around how to address this. Some of them are not very practical. Some of them are very practical. Some need some work. But the bottom line is, unless we focus on those things, unless we move away from the mindset that we have just accepted our unemployment figure the way it is, we will never really proactively try and address these things. So from my perspective, the key focus for everybody in this country at this point in time should not be growth in terms of the corporate environment, but rather a reduction in the unemployment figure. And whether there's there would be an investment required from corporates in order to do this, but I just don't see any alternative. I think we are fooling ourselves if we think that we can carry on like this. The sad part for me, and it's become quite prevalent during the whole COVID pandemic, is that because the system is so flawed, whenever there's a crisis like we have now, it takes a very long time, if it ever happens, for people that are in the top layer to really feel the impact of it. So what that means is that if I look at what happened during the COVID period, there's a lot of people in the lower income spectrum and maybe even middle income that are a lot worse off than what they were before COVID. But if you look at the top layer, the billionaires of this country they are actually in a better position. Some companies made more money during COVID than they did before COVID. And just looking at that has to tell you that our system's flawed. It's one thing to look at capitalism as a very healthy system, because it incentivizes people to do better and to improve, and to see the rewards for what they've done when they do improve. But it sort of discounts a layer of people that we can't afford to do that. We can't afford to sit back and say, because some people are really doing well, we don't have to care about the people that are really doing badly. We have to take care of that. So when I look at a country, I always try and relate it back to a family, where I say that when you have a family, you take care of all the members in that family, irrespective. You take care of them irrespective of how many times you've fought with them, how many disagreements you have with them. And it doesn't mean that there's not a debate or an argument or trying to improve some of those members. But what it does say is that every single person in that family has a plate of food on the table at night. Every single member of that family has a bed they can sleep at night, irrespective of what happened during the day or during the last. Whether we had the worst fight ever, I'm not going to deny you a plate of food. So our basic needs, we just cannot afford to have the extremes that we have now, where you have extreme poverty side by side with extreme wealth. So when I look at, and I'm not promoting any ideology, of any kind. I'm not saying that capitalism is bad or socialism is the better option. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that there has to be a responsibility and accountability from those that have, in terms of the people that do not have. And that accountability does not translate into a grant. It does not translate into charity. It translates into opportunities. So we have to create opportunities where we just give them enough momentum so that they then can improve themselves. We have to bring the people into the economy, and the moment we do that is the moment that those people then start contributing to the economy in a positive way. And I think this sort of also led to authoring the book Timmy, that you spoke about earlier. When I started on the LinkedIn platform many years ago, but I really became active on it about 3 years ago. And I think it was just prior to me leaving the corporate environment. And it's also, I think, what's one of the reasons that it really started stimulating thoughts in my mind, saying that, it's one thing to talk about these things, but one needs to take action around it and make sure that it happens. So when I started talking on the platform, and I try to speak out for people that's maybe either not on the platform or maybe do not have a place where they can voice their frustration. I started talking on behalf of these people, really mentioning things that, and then again, often people think those that have are really, really bad people, because how can they not help people that are in such a state of poverty? But more often than not, it is purely a mindset change that's required, where people are either absent-minded in the sense, well, we are comfortable and we're enjoying our lives, and we don't really pay attention to what's happening around us. And in terms of what I put forward on LinkedIn, that was really what I tried to do. I really tried to wake people up to certain things and say, wait a second, have you thought about this? Have you thought about the fact that there's a guy today that's digging through your bin for food, and he's not just a bin digger, he's a human being. He's got a name. He was born at the same level as you. His parents had the same aspirations for him as your parents had for you. And maybe that just plants a seed within some people's minds to say, you know what, I need to start paying more attention to certain things in my life. So when I went through the better part of 2019, 2020, thinking that at some point in time I need to pen my thoughts and things down in a book. But you would find, and people that have done books before, and that's probably listening in would know, that there's often a lot of research required because there's a lot of factual stuff that you might state or have an opinion about, and you better make sure that it's correct before you write about it. And while I was thinking about that, it came to me that wait a second, but if you go and look at the stuff that you've published on LinkedIn up to this point in time, it's a lot of content. Maybe just take that out, because first of all, not everybody that should read the book is on LinkedIn. So that's a starting point. And the second thing is, just in terms of how the LinkedIn algorithm works, not everybody that's even connected to you would have seen what you post about. So maybe if you combine it into a book format and make it available, then it also gives an opportunity to people to read about stuff. And it's very recent. You know, I don't talk about stuff that happened many years ago. I might have stories from a previous time, but it's pretty much in terms of what's happening currently in our country that I address or speak about. A lot of stuff or thoughts got triggered during the COVID process, where I especially had an issue with the way that financial institutions handled their clients. I picked up on a lot of like small little things that has always been there, but that COVID highlighted. So things that people would have been completely ignorant to, and suddenly during COVID, because of the impact that it's had, it's become a lot more visible. And that's really where I started in compiling or collecting all the stuff that I've done on LinkedIn. I put it in a book format. I provided, in terms of every post that I had on LinkedIn, I provided a bit of context. Funny enough, when I started it, the idea was to put what I had on LinkedIn into a book format, only to realize halfway through it just exactly how much stuff was on LinkedIn. I had to put a cutoff date in terms of up to where I will do this, and it ended up in 300 pages in a book. So we published the book, made it available on Amazon. It's available on Takealot as well, and it's really the aim is for people to read it and either be inspired by some of the things that I mention in there, some of the stories I tell, or to maybe just wake up to certain things that they maybe have not noticed or taken made the effort to explore, and see whether that cannot stimulate a much wider attempt to address this issue. Coming back to what I said originally around eradicating unemployment in the next decade, the basis. So I spoke about the system that is broken and the flaws within corporate environments and the recruitment process. But the way I see us addressing unemployment at scale is by utilizing data. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I've spent the biggest part of my career within the data space, and I fully understand the potential that data has to generate wealth. The only problem that we have is that most people that are involved in that space centralize that success and that wealth within a very small group of people. And my intention is to broaden that benefit and to say, you know what, if I look at most of the successful companies out there, they are successful based on the way in which they utilize data, the way they do their analytics, the way they understand their customers. The most successful companies out there, the likes of Google and Amazon and even Tesla, they know their customer through the data that they accumulate around their customers. So they know where you are, what you want, when you buy it, how much of it you bought, what your friends are buying, why you bought it, how much money you have to buy. All those things they understand. And understanding that makes it possible for them to grow their companies at the phenomenal rate that they do. So if a company like Amazon can create the wealth or be as successful as they are over a 10-year period, why would it not be possible, if the same principles are being applied, for a company to be as successful over 10 years, but instead of centralizing that and making or creating another billionaire for Africa, we take that benefit and we spread it in order to ensure not that we give handouts, but we create opportunities for people who will then pick up the momentum and become economically active like any other normal people or any other income receiving person. So for me, that's the key. I think the key would be whether the analysis is around social issues, you know, what's not statistical stuff, but more so challenging areas. How many people there are that are hungry? How many people there are that needs to be fed? How much of money is being paid out in grants and positively impact people? How many people are studying? How many people are successful? How much money is being spent on studies? Is there not a better way to address that? Whatever the analysis come down to, the analysis would be used to better our current environment. So to improve on what we have now, in the same way that any other company improve on their services. And I think that is the key thing for me, to have a company that utilizes data, the power of data, which is unchallenged. There's no corporate business today that will deny or the fact that their biggest asset is the data that they have on their customers and the way that they use it. So if we utilize that power and then use whatever income we generate, I'm not creating a charity organization. I'm creating a very profitable business. But the intention is to use those profit in a way that we create opportunities for very broad groups of South Africans. Yeah, I mean, I've spoken a lot now, but it's pretty much a summary of where we are heading with I Help You, and it's also it just gives you an indication of what it is that inspired me to get onto this journey. And to see whether, you know, in the time that I've got left, I can make a change that has a positive impact on this country.
Sure. Thank you so very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the person who was talking is Armande Kruger. He wrote a book, To the Disempowered, I Give My Voice, and is also the founder of I Help You, which is a company that, as he was explaining, trying to make a difference within the country. Armande, one of the reasons that actually made me to invite you was after reading so many articles that you were writing on your account on LinkedIn, and you identified, as you rightfully said, things that sort of become higher walls for people who are looking for jobs. And if the country, which is South Africa in this case, I guess even Africa as a whole can learn from it, if the country is to look at things that needs to be improved on when it comes to recruitment, you said for every vacancy, the likelihood of a person that is employed to be considered is very high. And then in the beginning, you spoke about flaws within the system, which is the recruitment system in this case. I just want you to speak more about a situation where an advert is put on the newspaper, for instance, or on radio, and they say they are looking for employment. There are quite a number of issues that you highlighted, which are contributing towards people not being considered for these vacancies, and only those who are already employed get considered. What are those things? I just want you to highlight, because I feel that you just brushed through them. Highlight those flaws that you have identified when you're busy analyzing the situation that even led to business day newspaper indicating that government is now agreeing with your company that what you are doing, they have failed to do. So I just want you to take us through those, just for the people to further understand what are the things that you are referring to when you talk about flaws within the system.
Thank you, Thembi. I think maybe to explain it a bit better, if I spend a lot of time in my career, I spent in sales, and whichever salespeople reported to me at the time, when we get to the end of the year, you know, there's always an evaluation of to what extent they've achieved their targets. And I was always of the opinion that I'm less concerned with how many sales you've made. I'm more concerned with how many sales you've lost, because it's in that space where I address your shortcomings. You know, and when it comes to recruitment, I feel the same way. I feel that by just looking at a CV, which is a black and white document, and discounting people because they don't meet my criteria, I'm not really helping anybody. You know, I'm only picking the cream, and I go through an interview process, and I employ someone that really would have had no problem finding jobs anyway. You know, you often see a company advertise, we're looking for the best this and the best that, and the guy that's got an MBA and whatever. Everybody's looking for them. So if you're that person, you will have no problem finding work. You know, that's not the issue. The issue is not trying to include those people and employ those people. The issue lies with the people that are battling for whatever reason. You know, whether you're the person that's got a degree, but your marks are not where they're supposed to be. That could be for many reasons. That could be because you were just a student at the time and lazy like any other student. You know, but it could also be that you studied under very difficult circumstances. To now look at your marks and say, well, you know what, I've looked at 10 CVs, I've only picked the one with the highest mark, and that person probably is the person that was in any case in the best position to get the better marks, is not addressing it. So when we look at there needs to be a responsibility on hiring managers as well as recruiters to say, when you put an advert out of any kind, whoever applies for that position, even if you do not employ them, you have to put them in a better position for the next job that they apply for. And whatever that translates to, whether it's during I remember talking about it once where I said, when you walk into an interview, the interview is you've already been selected. So your CV, they've looked at your CV and your skills, and they said, okay, fine, I think this guy might be able to work for the company. So now you walk into that interview process, and it's very much speed dating. You know, within a few minutes, people need to like you or they won't like you. That is what that interview is about. It's not about checking your skill or because you would do tests and they would have seen your CV. Now, if they do not like you in the first 2 minutes, they probably will be polite enough to spend the rest of the 45 minutes and talk to you, ask you a few generic questions, what you like, what you don't like, what your weaknesses and what your strengths. But in their minds, they've already made, in the back of their mind, they've already decided they're not going to employ you. Now, for me, a much better thing to have done is to the moment that you realize you're not going to employ that person, to say, listen, I don't think you're going to be a fit for this position, but let's just talk a bit about where do you want to go. Let me discuss with you the reason why I don't think you're suitable for this position and what you need to do in order to make sure when you get to the next interview that you are in a better position, because that then helps that person. The other thing is when I look at that, and this is probably very drastic, but can you imagine if we place an embargo on employment of employed people for a 2-year period? So if I say to a company, you cannot employ somebody that's already employed for any of your vacancies, okay? And by the way, before we start that 2-year period, I want you to state what your vacancies are, because I don't want you to now go and say, no, I don't have any vacancies. So you state your vacancies. And then if you have 20, I'm telling you that within the next 2-year period, you need to fill those vacancies, but you cannot fill them from the employed pool. So now immediately what people might say is, but wait a second, some of these are senior positions, right? Which is true. But then you have to work out a system where you feed it from the bottom to the top. Then you need to move somebody that's in your company into that senior position so that you can have a vacancy that's more junior, so you can bring somebody in from a pool that's of unemployed people. So the actual workings or the practicalities around it need to be worked out, but it need to be worked out in the same way that people had to do it before we had the empowerment regulations come in place. You know, a lot of people would object to those regulations, go like, oh, but certain people can't find jobs now. But what they forget is that those regulations only came in place when corporate did not do what they were supposed to do. So all I'm saying is, if you are proactive about this and you say, if we have an unemployment figure that sits at 30% plus, if a huge amount of those people are graduates, why are we not proactively looking at ways and means of bringing them into the employment world? It has to be done. You can't, and you know what makes the situation even worse? If you see it often, I know of graduates, I have employed graduates that would just to generate an income, would have done some mediocre work. They would have pushed around trolleys somewhere. They would have been cashiers somewhere. Graduates, people with degrees, they would have been petrol attendants for what it's worth. Now, every time that a graduate takes a position like that, they take a position away from somebody else that maybe needs it more. So the problem just becomes bigger and bigger unless you address the issue that we have now and you take accountability. It's not somebody else's problem, it's our problem, it's the corporate environments. But unless you take that responsibility and say, we have to make it work, it's just going to get worse. So that's where I see the recruitment. The recruitment, there's really a mentorship role that needs to be played by people that's in that process when they do speak to candidates. There's also, I think you will find there's a lot of resentment from especially candidates towards recruitment and hiring managers because of the way that they're being treated. But you know, there are two sides to the coin. On the one hand, I fully understand that and appreciate that. But you can imagine if you put a position out, if you put out one position and you get 1,000 applications, it's very difficult to treat 1,000 people on a personal level. So for a recruiter, this whole thing just becomes a numbers game, saying we need to get through this as quickly as possible, and we don't really become personal with our candidates. So from that perspective, it just shows you how many, by everybody getting involved and everybody owning the problem, there's a lot of these things that by default will disappear if we start addressing it.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, you're also allowed to ask questions. You can indicate by a raise of hand, as we discussed with Armande Kruger. Armande, while they're still thinking about what to ask you, Business Day indicated that government admits that I Help You is succeeding where they have failed. What is it that we have done differently? And what is it that they have acknowledged to indicate that you have done it better than they would have done it?
So I think when we look at government operates it in a very specific way, and corporate is driven by profit, which means my shareholders dictate what I do. That's how corporate works. Government works on what my voters want from me, right? But the period, if you think about government, unlike corporate, I don't become a CEO in most instances. I don't become a CEO for a contractual period of 5 years. And then after that, or even before that, a year before that, I need to start making sure that I'm likable, you know, that people will reinstate me in my position. In government, it works like that. So if you think about the size of the problem that we have, and government essentially have maybe a 3.5-year window in which they can address this. And even during that window, you'll see within government, there's so much politics within government. There's so much movement within government. I mean, I've seen and I've engaged with ministers around certain issues, only to find that minister in another portfolio 6 months down the line. So it becomes, government is a very difficult environment to come up with like serious solutions. So it's very much almost catering towards the voting people and making sure that I make a lot of promises, but in essence, I actually know I can't deliver on those promises. So what's different in terms of the corporate environment, since corporate is driven by profit, if our only objective is to make sure that we are hugely successful, okay? So that's the drive. The drive is that we make money. The difference is in terms of IILP is that we utilize that money differently. Now, in answer to your question, government cannot compete with corporate when it comes to being financially successful. They can't. Their operations different. Their responsibilities are different. Corporate's objective is to make money. Now, the only thing we want to change is that once you've made the money, have some social responsibility in terms of the people that do not have money, and see how we can bring those people into the economy. So where government will focus on things like education, for instance, and will be very dependent on taxation to come in to fund that, our focus would be on creating opportunities. You know, when there's make no mistake, there's the Yes Foundation, there's a Arambi, very, very dynamic foundations and operations that are training people and equipping them very well. But there's still that end point once they're done there, when they need to now be employed, where there's something that's missing there. You know, we have internship programs that we go through, which is great, but I find that the internship programs currently is almost like a dead-end street, because you firstly, you would find that a lot of companies they think the internship, they have the wrong agenda when they do an internship. That's the first thing. So you go into an environment and you actually learn very little during that period. It's a tick box, and once it's done, nobody really cares about what happens to you after that. So and then the second thing is, even if you are trained properly during your internship period, not all of you would get an opportunity after that time. So you end up either jumping from one internship to the next, or just falling back into the unemployment pool. I can promise you, there are very few people, hiring managers and recruitment agencies, that receives a CV where somebody says, I've just finished my 2-year internship with XYZ company, that looks at that as 2 years worth of experience. They don't. For them, you're still entry level. You're still exactly where you were when you graduated. So unless you go through an internship program where you are being employed by the person that provided you with that internship, you might actually end up in a worse situation further down the line. So I think when we talk about being successful where government has failed, we talk about being a business that is profit driven, but just shares the benefit with a much wider base.
Okay.
That's the biggest difference. And also, and the last thing obviously is the fact that we are a technology company. So we really, really believe that we are focusing on the right things in order to make that profit, or that create that wealth.
Okay. I think the challenge is government is considered currently to be the biggest employer. And yes, mentorship may not be as it's supposed to be. And yes, as much as there is a need to consider those who are at the lower level, or those who are not currently employed, to be employed, would you say that issues relating to deployment also play a role in the increasing of unemployment? Would you say that, like you've spoken now, the mentorship and the internship that currently government does, or which companies are doing, making more people to be considered to have experience, but not enough for them to qualify to be appointed, as one of the challenges? I think we can be able to identify all the gaps and all the challenges. Maybe the question will be, as an IT company, for instance, what would be the advice for government to improve, for instance, in this area? Because everybody who's not employed, the first company, or if I may call it that, to look at will be government. So what is it that government can do to do things differently as the biggest employer currently in the country, probably in elsewhere, even in Africa, other African countries? What are the things that can be done differently, and an approach that can be used to deal with this gap that we have identified?
So Temi, I mean that is quite a loaded question. I tell you, we can probably keep busy for the next hour around it, because I'm really passionate about it. And again, I'm saying, when I put 10 solutions on the table, maybe only 2 of them would be practical. But the bottom line is we have to start thinking in that way. You know, if you're an entrepreneur, you'll fail 8 times and maybe successful 2 times or twice. But unless you do the 8 times, you're never going to get to the 2 times that you are successful. So when I look at government, government is just if you do economics 101, it states one of the government's functions is to provide employment. That is true. But I think we cannot solve the problem at the same level that we created it. From the world has moved on. You know, I often say that Stephen King says the world has moved on. So we really have to think maybe economics 101 is not applicable anymore. And instead of looking at government as being the biggest employer, government should be the biggest provider of entrepreneurial opportunities. And how that translates, I'm not sure. But if I say, instead of providing somebody with a job, why do we not take that initial investment of 12 months and rather provide a package to someone that can start a business? Would be that package then be a laptop, a free internet connection for 1 year, some training on something, whatever. Once I've equipped you with that, the obligation is then on you to become an entrepreneur and to create a thing where you employ a few people. So instead of government employing 1 person, they've created 1 entrepreneur that employs 10 people. I'm sometimes so amazed at the innovation and the ideas that I find from very young people, but they just do not have the means to get them started. I mean, I speak to people that sit with a laptop that's 20 years old, trying to do digital marketing, and their heads full of ideas. You know, I'm thinking to myself, if you just had a laptop that was 2 years old instead of 20 years old, if you had an internet connection where you can connect with clients, you would have been a very successful entrepreneur a long time ago. But now you battle through those initial stages, and eventually you gave up hope, and you maybe just fall into that either the unemployment pool or the pool that says, I'm just going to work now for government and the salary there because there's no hope for me. So when a government has to start looking at not so much creating this big animal, which is government that employs 50,000 people, but rather be a lean entity that provides entrepreneurial opportunities to people. So, and whatever the criteria might be in order for you to enter that, there shouldn't be a barrier to entry, but whatever that criteria might be, and they should put that in place and say, do your application, here's your package, off you go, we'll see you in 12 months time. Or even if we say, we'll check in with you every single month to see what your progress is, we'll provide some mentorship on the side, whatever that consists of. But creating an opportunity where 1 person can employ 10 or 20 or 100 people, rather than giving 1 person employment, for me is a much better position to be in. And you know, it's not that those people are not there. They are. I can promise you, I've spoken to a lot of them. And I often think that if I just had the means to put them in that position, they would have been successful people. They probably would have been more successful than myself at this point in time.
Would it be accurate to say the internship is not assisting in creating a pool where government can choose from, or where companies can choose from, because you said that even if they have the 2-year internship, companies don't consider that as experience. So is it still necessary to have this internship?
I think you know, at the extreme end, the answer is yes. But if I look at it closer, I might say internship's got a place. Remember, if you go 10, 20 years back, internship was not even a thing. You know, internship was in a practical environment where you obviously had to have practical experience, but internship has become par for the course. You know, everybody that comes out of varsity has to go to do an internship first. So why, you know, you have to ask yourself the question, what happened from then to now that this is suddenly a requirement? But if you tone that down a bit and you say, wait a second, maybe there is a space for internship, I would say it's just on the wrong side of the fence. Internship should be part of education and not part of employment, because at this point in time, it does not benefit you as employment. I mean, even if it's on your CV, it doesn't count as employment. So if you really are concerned that people are not ready when they come out of varsity, then rather include that internship as part of this. So they actually only qualify once they've done the internship. Then you level the playing field again. You know, understand, it's still a qualification thing. It's not, you don't create this illusion in people's minds that I really, you know, I really get sad when I see an announcement where somebody says, thank goodness, I've been so blessed, I found employment, and then I see what the employment is internship. And in my mind, I'm thinking, you're not really employed yet. You know, maybe there's a small amount of money that's being paid over to you, but it's just enough to get you to that facility and maybe buy lunch for you. It's not really a salary. So even though I understand they're happy, make no mistake, I understand the fact that they're happy about it. But in my mind, I'm thinking, because I've seen this so many times, that you're not even close to being employed yet. 12 months from now, unless you're top of the pack, or you really found space in a company that, and there are companies that do it, that are really socially responsible, you are not going to be better off. So in answer to your question, make it part of the education track rather than the employment track, and then it makes more sense to me. The other thing as well, and I mean, again, this is very radical, but I'm thinking, if I look at the amount of graduates that are unemployed, I'm thinking in my mind, and also the amount of debt that you accumulate when you do study, I'm thinking in my mind that one must or should maybe look at almost like a sponsored tertiary education program, where you say you cannot enter varsity unless you have a sponsorship. And that sponsorship means the person that's going to employ you at the end of that period. Now, if you want to go to varsity, you might think, wait a second, but now you're stopping me from going to study. But one has to keep in mind, the objective of studying is to find employment at the end. So if there's a responsibility for companies to say, wait a second, I am now by regulation forced to, if 1% of my staff that if I employ people to the extent of 1% of my staff complement in a year, 0.5% of that are supposed to be sponsorships for varsity. Then suddenly there's now an obligation. Nobody can walk away from it. It's not if you want to. Now corporates are obliged to sponsor people for varsity. So first thing that happens now is, you know that you go to varsity with a job already when you finish. That's the first thing. The second thing is, people will think twice about what they study, because it's not now just about getting a degree. You know, just get a degree, whatever it is. Just make sure you get a degree. And then once you're done with the 3 years, you have a stack of debt, or you've used up all your parents' saving money. You sit with this degree and you can't apply it. So we have to, I'm saying that you have to be sponsored before you go to varsity might be radical, but maybe there's something in between that we can look at to say, what do we need to do to make sure that firstly people study the right thing, and secondly that they can get employed once they finish their studies.
Okay, we have a hand, Shadrach Nguna. You can pose the question or comment.
Thanks a lot, Armande, for the presentation. Just last week, your presentation has actually taken me back to the presentation that I listened last week by Minister of Higher Education, Mr. Blade Demande, and he indicated a list of qualifications that are, maybe for lack of a better way, that are currently in demand, and students are basically encouraged to pursue them. Now, as someone who has been in this industry and being passionately concerned about the plight of the graduates who are concerned, don't you think part of the problem is, without being insensitive, part of the problem is we might have a lot of graduates who acquire degrees that are no longer appealing, or maybe that's not what the market currently is looking for. Don't you think that part of the problem that we are, I mean, if you've got a person who goes through a 2-year internship program in a government department, for 4 years, that person is unable to get employment, and 3 years down the line, he gets another internship for 2 years, and after that, that person is not absorbed by any other government institution or private institution. Does it, that on its own, is it not telling enough about the skill set that that person might be having? Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for the question. I think you're absolutely spot on. It is. There's no doubt in my mind that people are, today, in our current digital age, 3 years is a very, very long time, and things change so quickly that whatever your intentions were when you started might be, the world out there might be completely different by the time that you finish. And there might be, apart from the fact that you might be studying into a direction where there's no more jobs available when you're done, there might even be newer jobs available by the time that you finish. So in our education system, whether it's from school or tertiary education, normally lags behind a bit. You'd find people obtain a degree, and when they get into the working environment and see how things are being done in practice, they find out that, wait a second, whatever I've studied is actually outdated. So that's a problem that's been around for a long, long time. And that's why I'm convinced that we always have these gates and checkpoints at the wrong places. So I shouldn't be looking at my employees or my potential employees the day they finish varsity or the day they finish an internship program. I should be looking at them when they're at school already. I should be looking at them even before they start studying. I should be mentoring them, helping them. I should be helping varsities to ensure that the curriculum that they have is in line with what's happening in practice. So we have to, the amount of people that are completely disillusioned when they finish their studies is enormous. If I look at just the analytics space, the data analytics space, which I worked in for a long time, 99% of the people that I employed would have graduated with some kind of BSc IT or BCom IT qualification. But during that time, they would have been taught things like C# and Python. Well, Python's more recent, but let's say she's Java or C# or whatever. So in their mind, their technology track that they follow and their career would be within that hardcore development space where they sit down and they code like really nice applications and stuff. Whereas when they enter our space, suddenly the data analytics space is completely different. And whatever they've been equipped for in the last 3-4 years are almost not applicable anymore. And that's just this one area in terms of what I've got experience in. I can promise you, whether you look at logistics or finance or whichever qualification people get, it's exactly the same. So we have to make sure that we transfer our focus points to much earlier in the process. And when somebody goes to varsity, in their minds, first of all, they have to be sure, based on whatever their sponsor has told them, or whatever mentorship's been provided at that point in time, that they're not going to study for 3 years and do a 2-year internship program, only to find after 5 years that they're in completely the wrong space. I mean, we're not naive to think that things like that won't happen, but we must change it from being the norm to being the exception. And that's for me is the bottom line.
Do you think for jobs that are not really too technical, the degree is still relevant? I'm asking this because, like you rightfully said, so many people will be, celebrating having a degree, and I think we've been sort of I don't know whether to use acclimatized or sort of made to believe that if you have a degree, then the doors are opening, and then you graduate, the doors are not opening. And you did a degree which the things that you have learned are no longer relevant for specific companies, or maybe they're relevant for government. Government is looking at downsizing. Where will these people go? And over and above that, I think you spoke about the walls of indicating that the recruitment process, for instance, will require them to complete an application form. Where do they get money to make copies? They are required to have a car. They don't have money to buy a car because they are not employed. They come from poor families. They also have to have some money to connect to Zoom, buy data to connect to Zoom. There's no Wi-Fi in the rural areas. How do they get to be interviewed now with COVID-19, on our face? So do you think that there is still a need for some of the fields to have a requirement of a degree when people can actually acquire experience through doing the work? Yeah.
Tembi, that's the funny part of it. I think the short answer for me is no, because if you really start somebody at the bottom, you really, I mean, the person that starts their first job, their character and their mindset and whatever is more important than what they've studied for 3 years, firstly. Secondly, I think the requirement to have a degree is actually used, if we're very honest, it's actually used more as a filtering process than as a requirement. So for me to say we have a B degree requirement on my job spec, I can promise you most people don't even give it a thought as to why they put it on there, right? Because within that space, I mean, I've worked in many environments. If I have to be very, very honest, the fact that I put B degree as part of the requirement is not because there's anything specific in that B degree that I want. It's just a filtering process to say, well, you know what, if you studied for 3 years, maybe you are somewhat more intelligent than somebody that hasn't studied, whatever. If we're very frank about it. The funny part about the degree story is that in your first 3, 4, 5, 6 years of employment, what you've been taught at varsity actually has very little to do with what you do in that company. So every single thing that you do there, you would start from a zero baseline. They will teach you, you will have somebody that assists you, and over time you'll build up experience and you learn how the corporate environment works. Whether you're in finance or tech doesn't really matter. So very little of what you've learned during your 3-year studies is being applied. And then suddenly when you hit year 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you need to be promoted, the first question that's being asked is, well, do you have a degree, right? Because for this position, you need X, Y, Z degree. Now, if you think about it, at 10 years after you've studied, you must be a very clever person if you still remember what you've studied, but now suddenly it becomes important. So it just shows you how irrelevant that requirement is when you look at entry-level people. And I mean, obviously, if you want to be in the medical industry or you want to be engineering, whatever, there's no ways that you can deny people like that not to have a degree. But we're really talking about people here that almost go into a generic degree study because somebody has told them that as long as you have a degree, then you'll be employed. And that's where the problem lies. So, and even when you look at a job requirement, many times they don't even state what kind of B degree. They just said B degree. So I'm employing for a program or data analyst, and my requirement says any B degree. That in itself must tell you that it's being used as a filtering process rather than anything else. So the unfortunate thing is within the corporate environment, I don't see that change very quickly. You have a few people that maybe will call themselves radicals and suddenly will do away with a BA degree. But I'll be very, very reluctant to just say that they don't have some other means in which they want to try and qualify that you're suitable for the position. I think where it becomes applicable is when we say, listen, but get the whole thought of being employed out of your mind and think of being an entrepreneur. Because if you think in that way, then the B degree, the B degree would only be applicable in as much as it helps you. So if you really studied well and you've got a lot of things in your mind that will help you, then good for you. But if it's not applicable, then you're going to be an entrepreneur and do whatever you want to do in any case. And I think that's where we have to, the B degree is something that we can focus a lot on as to whether it is important or not. But I think it might distract us from the real issue, which is we need to get people to change the mindset that the only way to get an income is to get a salary. That needs to change.
That is so true. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any question, you are welcome to do so. We are almost towards the end, so we would appreciate if you can raise questions. Mr. Mashamba, any question, comment? You can unmute. If you can hear me.
I'm just a new person here. I'm still listening. I mean, I don't think I can ask question today.
Oh, okay. No, it's fine. But we appreciate you making time and join us. We really do. Hopefully next time you're gonna participate.
So, but I mean, I've been listening here. I think I picked up a few things, but I can't really put it on my mind right now.
Okay. Zola, any question, comment?
Hi, good afternoon, colleagues. Hi, Mr. Kruger. Yeah, this is very stimulating, and I like your approach where you focus more on those ones that are not as successful in the interview. Because part of the problem is exactly the point that if you're looking for a job, and then you don't become number one or you are number two, you are the second best. Once the position is awarded to the number one, the company or the government department forgets about you. So we are just thrown into this scrap heap if you are number two or number three. So I think your approach, exactly as you approach it in your sales department, where you don't only focus on what I win as sales, but you focus on what I've lost and the reasons why you are losing sales, because that's a big opportunity for your competition. You might as well be losing business to your competition, and it might be doing something wrong. I think exactly what I gather from your talk is that our education system does not really prepare us for the world of work. You go to varsity, you do your qualification, you go to the world of work, you see that is this a totally different world. So I think until we bridge that gap between what the industry is looking for and what we study, then I think that we'll achieve really progress in terms of development in our country. exactly the point that you were raising, that if maybe they can empower one person with interpreter skills, and then that person goes out there from varsity, from college, from tech, and creates maybe 10 jobs, then we can get somewhere. But the system is such that it creates dependency. I go through college or varsity being sponsored by NSFAS, the government bursary skill loan scheme. Then after I graduated, still I have to depend on government to get a job. It's a vicious cycle. It's really vicious until we find a way of breaking that vicious cycle. Then I think we'll get somewhere. But I think your talk is very stimulating. And I think we need to really if we're thinking clockwise, we need really now learn to think anti-clockwise. Thank you, Tilly, for the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the input. TBG, I'm doing this because we are not too many today. TBG, any comment, question?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to ask. I've been actually playing with my hand, trying to raise it because I've got so much in my head, but it's a bit unstructured on how I want to raise it. But Mr. Kruger, what you have presented to us is so profound, and I have been challenged actually to think outside of my scope, my mind, because I've always been saying, I mean, even this morning I was talking with a good friend of mine. We were just talking about how our education system has been structured, and you have just pinpointed to exactly how we were thinking. We were talking on things we were talking about. As Zola indicated, our education system it's not really supportive to innovation, to intro in entrepreneurship. Even though I know there's a course at a college called entrepreneurship. I've got a relative of mine who's a child of a relative who's studying entrepreneurship. But when I ask her this year is her final year. When I ask her what's happening next year, what's gonna happen, and she says, no, I'm still gonna look for employment and all that. And it made me question that entrepreneurship should translate that I go out there and create employment. So our education system is structured in such a way that when you get out of school, you must go look for employment. Until we change that mindset, until we change that structure, we will still be going up and down, going in circles, trying to filter people into employment. But I would like to appreciate what your company is doing in terms of mentoring the unsuccessfully filtered candidates, because that in itself will build confidence in the graduate or those who are in the market for employment, and it will build confidence for them to think outside the box that they are in, and hopefully they would impact into our economy more. But yes, we need to change. We need to completely change our mindset. Government need to relook into the education that it provides. Yes, we can talk about qualifications, whether it's necessary to get degrees for particular jobs, or whether it's not necessary. We can talk about those, but we need to have a situation wherein a child from a primary school has an idea. What we need to do is to empower that child in how to make that idea grow if they do, or how to think, how to gain ideas. If we can structure our education system like that, I don't know if it's practical or not, but if you can find a way to structure our education like that from a young age, we won't be needing others to help us in terms of building our economy. We can do it on our own. Thank you. I think I've spoken too much. I still have so much in my head, but I'll pause here. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. I think maybe just to come in terms of, there's a few things that you triggered in my mind now. When we talk about the education system, I have a very strong opinion that what we are being taught at school does not prepare us for what lies after school. Whether you're going to study or not doesn't really matter. But I have a very strong opinion that once you've done primary school, which has laid the foundation for things like, be that grammar or maths or whatever that might be, the moment you enter your high school years, they almost need to provide you with two tracks. The one track would be your theoretical kind of track, the people that want to become doctors, want to become engineers, that need to really bed down on things like mathematics and science and whatever that might be. So you pick that track. But the other track should be an entrepreneurial track where they teach you about finance, in terms of how to make money, how to start a business, what are the key things you need to keep in mind, what are the obstacles that there are, all the things that you need to go through. Because 90% of the people that finish school are not really people that are ready to enter the formal market or to become doctors and engineers. And once they get lost into this generic environment of, you need to just have a B degree of some kind and then you'll get employed, you end up where we are now, where even graduates are unemployed. So I think the preparation and education years need to be different. In the school years already need to be different there. We need to be, I see some events at some of our schools where they would have markets, for instance, and I see children thrive sometimes. It's not like they're not capable of doing it. And once that bug has bitten, then you find once a person understands what it means to hustle and to negotiate and to make money and buy stuff and sell it, whatever. Once you've bedded that down at school level already, you can only see the benefits once they qualify or once they complete their school career. So that's the one thought. The other thought is, and this is not my words necessarily, but you have a mindset, you have a scarcity mindset, and you have an infinity mindset. The one says that there's only so much that we can have, and whoever's lucky enough to get their hands on it, they are the ones that will have it. The other one said there's more than enough for everybody. We need to just train you and mentor you and show you how to get to it. Now, when in my career, when I started off in sales, I actually had a very dynamic boss at the time, and I learned a lot of stuff from him. But the one thing that I remember very, very clearly is one day I was very concerned about the fact that we are doing certain things within our company, and our competitors were doing the same stuff, and they were winning business, and I was worried that we're not winning that business. And he said to me, "You know what? Forget about the competitors. They're not your issue. You need to just make sure that you do the best that you can, provide the best service, deliver the best products. Because if people believe in what you do, more people will come to those services and to those products, which means you are growing the market. And when you grow the market, you don't really care whether there are other people in the market because there's more than enough for everybody." So it's an old story about having a pie, and now we decide to take that pie and divide it in smaller slices so that everybody gets a piece, or rather to say, let's make a bigger pie. So even if you get the same percentage, you still get a bigger part of the business. And I think that's what we need. We have to change the mindset where we say, listen, there's only one house, there's 10 people that need a house. We need to say there's one house, we need to create 20 houses. So even if there's only 10 people, our mindset has to be to produce. I often use the example where I say, people believe that in general, you know, when you look at poverty and stuff, people often want to go like, oh, but it's your fault. You know, you're the reason why you are there, or you're just lazy, or you don't want to work. But it's not true. People really want to work. People really want to earn their income. They don't want to be handed the income. So if I often say to people, maybe you don't have a job, but you're never out of work. So if you wake up in the morning with a mindset, I need to work, eventually the income will come. If I sit on the corner and I say I don't have a job, and I sit there every single day and I do nothing, that means I will never generate an income. But if I sit on that corner and I say, wait a second, there's a lot of work to be done here. Even if I just walk up and down the pavement and I pick up all the rubbish that's lying here and I throw it in a bin, I can promise you somebody notices this. Say, wait a second, what are you doing? No, I'm doing this. Who are you working for? No, I'm not working for anybody. So where do you get the income from? No, I don't have an income. Wait a second, that's not right. I think we should let the community start paying you for what you do. That's a different mindset. So always remember, even though you don't have a job, you're never out of work. And once you start working, you create the value, the income will come.
Wow. Even though you have a job, you still have something to do, which can result in you having a salary. You spoke about the entrepreneurial spirit or approach being used in high school. We once went to one high school where when they teach economics and business management, they already ask kids to come up with small businesses that they can be able to sell, not only to the fellow kids or fellow learners, but also to the community. And these kids decided to start a tomato jam, which they now, sell to the community. And it grew and grew, and now they started hiring, community members to become, So I agree with you that that is something, but it's not something that is replicated. That is the sad part.
Tembi, you are so right. I mean, can you imagine you have a schooling system where the one track is theoretical and they say to you, you are going to study, you're going to write exams, and based on your grades, we will qualify you, but you can pick the other track. And the other track's a financial, economical, entrepreneurial track. And the way you qualify from that track is by the profit that you've made. The mindset's completely different. So I'm saying, okay, fine, whether we call it grade 12 or whatever we call it at the end, doesn't matter. We're saying you've got a target to make X profit. You have a target to benefit the community like this. And once you reach that, then you qualify. And remember now, as you said rightly now, once you qualify, that's not the end of the road, because now you've been equipped. I mean, now you're just going to go from strength to strength, and that in itself does not just benefit you, it benefits the community, it benefits the economy. Everybody benefits from the fact that you've become economically active.
It reminds me of some policy that government actually developed. Is called recognition of prior learning. That is where they recognize the fact that you have been working for years without a specific degree, but you are actually acquiring knowledge that will be equal to a degree. But the sad part is government is not implementing that policy. It is sitting somewhere in somebody's shelf. And I think it speaks to what you have just indicated, that what others can do on the side, or kids can do on the side, which is practical, can be called grade 12 or whatever it is called, but they will end up qualifying to get a certificate of some sort because they will be learning in the process and being mentored. It needs indeed to change the mindset. I want to also speak to the part where salaries are paid at a very highest level in the name of wanting to attract the best skill or the best people. What is your view? Is that not also blocking the market in terms of allowing those who are not in the employment sector to become employed? Because you had hunting this person, and the only way you can be able to keep them will be by paying them this amount of money, which was probably going to pay 15 cleaners, for instance. I'm just giving an example. And also issues of of the labor policies or labor-related policies, where they will require you to pay people a specific amount of money. Where is the sharing there? Wouldn't you want to have the sharing approach where I say, okay, in my culture, they say, if I had a locust, I have a locust, we can cut it in small pieces and we all eat, no matter how small it is, but would have had a share. But the approach now in government is, even in private sector, is if you need an engineer in your case, or you need a data scientist in your case, you'd have to put the amount of money at a specific level that will allow them to be retained. So where is the, the sharing and caring, and also the mindset change? What would you advise in that regard?
Yeah, so to me, it becomes a very complicated, or the answer is very complicated in the sense that you don't want to mess with the normal dynamics of economy. The demand and supply issues. So high demand, low supply, it chases up the pricing. You don't want to mess with that, because that's a very good dynamic in order to ensure, firstly, that there's an incentive for people to improve on quality, for instance. The problem is that if there is a low supply, unless you have a responsibility to address that, that gap will just increase over time. So for me, it's not the drive to have the best, to do the best. All that should still be there, but we have to combine that with the social responsibility. So we have to. There's a basic level at which there's almost like a line that needs to be drawn that says you cannot deny people the following, whatever that might mean, whatever amount of food that might mean, or housing, or education. That's the line that you draw. Anybody that's below that line, we need to be proactively trying to push them above the line. The people that remain below that line for whatever reason, because they're not capable, because they're too old, because whatever the reason might be, we have an obligation to look after them. But we can't say that there's a line, and the moment that somebody falls below that line, we don't care anymore. They go into the abyss, and that's somebody else's problem. The people that are above that line needs to have a responsibility. And I think that, to me, is probably where government would have to come in with some form of regulation. It's unfortunate, but it is a reality. When you leave it up in a normal economic environment, there's a lot of people that will just be discounted by the system. So we have to. The only difference for me is that the regulation is not supposed to say we are going to make sure that we keep these people alive, so to speak. So it's borderline. It's like minimum wage, charity, grants. That's not the objective. The regulation should be, we need to bring these people above the line. So we need to create opportunities. And corporates, what are you doing about that? Even at some point, I made the comment, and I said, if you made social responsibility more personal, I think we will see a completely different environment. So when I pay my taxes in a year, in my mind, I might be upset with government. I might like, oh, you're wasting my money, or there's corruption or whatever. But in my mind, I've given you X amount of money. You do with it whatever you need to do with it. And if there's somebody that complains that they're unemployed, government sort it out. It's not my problem. But if I've been put in a position where they say to me, you know what, the Smith family are unemployed, and you are responsible for them, I think my mindset, so even if they go, we'll give you a tax rebate for X amount of money, but these people are now your responsibility. I can promise you the last thing that I'm going to do is pay them a grant every single month. I'm going to be actively looking for a job for Mr. Smith, a job for Mrs. Smith, making sure that the children get into the right school. That's what I will be doing. And that's why I'm saying I think social responsibility has to become more personal. Even I went as far as saying that corporates should adopt certain communities. So when the analogy that I used at the time, I said I used to go to the zoo, And I remember signs on the cage of, say, the penguin or the gorilla or whatever, and it will say, Penguin Peter has been adopted by nursery school so-and-so. And what that meant is that nursery school so-and-so would donate an X amount every month, and that would feed Penguin Peter. Now, if you have the same concept in terms of community, and I say tomorrow that whoever, Nedbank, is now responsible for XYZ Park community, it means they put a signboard up there that says, this is our responsibility. And when I drive past there and there's no running water, the roads are in a state, people are begging in the streets, I'm going to go like, Nedbank, you know what, you're not actually doing your job. You know, you said that you've adopted this community, but look at the state of the place. What are you doing about it? And that's for me a lot more of a personal social responsibility, rather than saying I've given my money in tax to the government and now I can sit on the sideline and complain because they're not doing their jobs. I think the realities might also come to the fore where and make no mistake, there are a lot of challenges within government, but we often are spectators on the side that are very quick to react and very quick to complain, but we maybe do not know the extent of the problem that needs to be addressed by government. The moment you make it personal, we suddenly become aware of that, and we're less prone to be spectators, and we will get involved more in order to address the issues.
That is so true. And it actually reminds me of situations where private companies will move their call center functions overseas, which were supposed to be creating jobs probably for people within the country. Would you say that is a true indication of the fact that people or the companies feel we have paid the tax, it's fine? The unemployment is actually the government problem. We can create jobs in, I remember I received a call and asked the lady, where are you calling from? And she's like, from Singapore. Oh, okay. How do you link with this company? No, we're doing these call center services for them. But the very same companies complain about corruption, the government is not doing a lot. So would you say is the fact that they have not taken that as a personal responsibility like your company has?
Yeah, I think, Debbie, I like working from first principles. So if I look at the first question that comes to mind is, why are they moving it overseas? So I don't want to address the fact that they're moving it overseas. I want to address the reason why they're moving it overseas, and whatever that might be. You know, if it's more cost effective for them to do it overseas, I have to ask the question: why is it more cost effective? Why is it cheaper for me to get somebody in Singapore to do it rather than somebody in South Africa? And when I look at it, then I need to go and look at that company in Singapore. If it comes down to unethical business, so to speak, so I'm saying, well, you know what? They are actually abusing their powers in Singapore. So they're paying people a lot less than what they should be paying them, and therefore they can provide the services cheaper than here. Then my question is, but why do you even engage with that company? You know, it's unethical to even do business with them. So you need to bring that, and I'm talking very broadly.
Yeah.
But the point that I'm trying to make is that I have to go right down to the reason as to why people are moving their business overseas and address that issue. And that's the way we're going to ensure that we keep the business within our borders.
How do we, ladies and gentlemen, those who have just joined us, we are having Armande Kruger. He is the author of To the Disempowered, I Give My Voice. And we have been talking about quite a number of issues, from the fact that recruitment is currently, not only, I guess, in South Africa, maybe in many companies or many countries, mostly in Africa, there's a need for us to improve. Flaws have been identified, which when the video gets uploaded, you'll be able to listen to. But one thing that he highlighted that stood out for me was that whenever there is a vacancy, the likelihood of a person who is unemployed to be considered are very slim as compared to somebody who is currently employed. And those are the people who usually get considered. And he further also indicated issues relating to, you know, the walls that have been built about asking people that are already looking for jobs to have Zoom access to Zoom, those people to have specific qualifications which may not necessarily add value to the work that they are currently doing. So if you have any question, you may have found that us on the way, but if you have any question or comment, you're welcome to raise your hand and ask the question. Armande, there's somebody who was on the platform. He sent me a question and said he had to go rush to some meeting. That the youth currently, because of the requirement to have specific qualifications, end up getting, you know, looking for institutions that actually fly by nights. They're not necessarily authentic. But because of that desperation of the fact that if I have a qualification, hopefully something is going to come out. How do we speak for them? How do we, you know, advise and encourage them? Yeah, to look at a different approach as compared to going to those fly by night and then get a certificate that may not even be regarded as authentic by the South African qualification you know, authorities. What is it that we can advise them?
Tembi, I think, and this is very much my personal opinion around it. Having employed many people over many years, when I look at a CV, there are a few things that would stand out in that CV for me. Experience would be one, okay, which is obvious. Then the qualification is another, but the qualification really is the tertiary qualification. So the degree or the doctor's degree or master's degree or whatever that person obtained. And then in terms of training, I would look at training that's very specific to what I'm employing for. So if I'm looking for a programmer, for instance, and he's done a C# certification or a Java certification, that would be relevant for me. But what I find in terms of many of these colleges out there, the certifications, diplomas, whatever that they give you at the end of your training period, carries very little weight within the working environment. And for me, it's sad that people that would go to those colleges, and again, this is my opinion, so I'm not trying to slate any college that is out there, but people that go to those colleges thinking that with that diploma or certificate, they will be in a better position, is probably a bit off the mark. I would look at training outside of your tertiary environment. I would really look at something that's practical for what I want to achieve after that. So if in my mind, I want to be a digital marketer, or in my mind, I want to be an IT person, technical person, whatever, and I'd go and do a course specific to that, that either certifies me as being successful or gives me a diploma. I mean, even the diploma and the certification almost becomes irrelevant, but it equips you for what you want to do. But then it's going to be up to you to create that job for yourself or to be an entrepreneur. So to use the digital marketing example, as I'm really keen on doing this. This is what I want to be, what I want my career to be. I see a college that's presenting a course. I go on the course, they train me, I learn a few things, I come back, and then I start my process. You know, I start doing digital marketing, even at a small scale, for one client, for a small client, and so I grow my business. That is fine. But if you're looking at the formal employment market, I really do not see that carry a lot of weight. And it's sad, but it's true. So if you top up your degree with those certifications and diplomas and whatever, unless you have the time on your hand to do it, you're probably going to be wasting money and time, rather than trying to either find employment as soon as possible or trying to become an entrepreneur and then build it up from there.
That is so true. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have got any question or comment, this will be the last round for us to take the questions or comment. But as they are busy thinking, I'm just now reminded of the fact that you once said in one of your articles that we must stop building the walls. How do we do that?
Temi, that comes back to the scarcity mindset, where we really look after. I have a very strong opinion that there is no 5-point plan. There's no magic plan to success. Most of the people were just in the right place at the right time, and a door opened for them. For you to be the one that was lucky enough to get that opportunity, you cannot now stand on the side and go like, this is my own doing. You know what? I'm successful. I made it by myself, and therefore don't even blame me for what I have. You have the same opportunity as me. You go and make it work for yourself. We have to really be grateful for the fact or for what we have, and in being grateful, we have to look at those that don't have, and it's again, not building that wall higher, but extending the table. Is not about giving what you have to someone else. It's about providing the opportunities for them to get where you are at now. So for me, there's no. I don't want anybody that has now to have less. That's not the idea. But you need to create opportunities for other people to get where you are at now as well. That's what it's all about. And that's the infinity mindset. You really need to look out, create opportunities to make sure that we don't take what we have now and share into smaller and smaller pieces, but rather build on what we have now so that other people can also benefit from it.
That is true. How can we also give the voice or our voices to the disempowered?
Temi, we have to. I think we sometimes are. We sometimes forget how much we have and how little we need, right? Which means in our mind, our needs are constantly increasing. If I have a house, tomorrow I want a bigger house. If I have a car, tomorrow I want 2 cars. If I have a cupboard full of clothes, I need all of it to be branded tomorrow. And while I'm doing all of these things, I forget the fact that there are really people that are still struggling out there. So what I'm saying is that instead of looking for the bigger house, just give a thought to those people who do not have, right? And see whether that which you wanted to spend on your next house, whether in some way you cannot utilize that to bring people into the economy. And again, it brings me back to my original point. The strange thing about this is by doing that, 5 years from now, I will still reap the benefits from it. So if I have an entrepreneur today with a business and I help 1 million people to come into the economy, those million could be clients of mine tomorrow. They can start contributing to my business tomorrow. And that's the point. The point is by opening up the doors, by extending opportunities to people, in the long run, I'm going to benefit myself as well. It's not a giveaway. Now I have to have less than I could have had. That's not the situation. It's really a case of the moment that everybody benefits, everybody benefits.
That is so true. Where can we get the book?
The book's available basically 3 places. Either one is Amazon, which I suggest you don't go to, because they will charge you as much for delivery as they will charge you for the book. But it's also available on Take-A-Lot, so you can go there. And then lastly, it's also available from the ILP website, where if you go onto the website, you order it basically directly from me, and I could even then sign or include a message in the book if you want to.
You can assist us with the website and also show us the cover page of the book if you can.
So there it is. I don't know whether you can see it.
Yes.
So that's the book. And it's really, I mean, it's worth a read. Like I said, I think there's a lot of things in here that might trigger thoughts in your mind. It's very inspirational. It's probably a book unlike any other book that you've read, in the sense that it's not like a sequential thing. You can pick it up, open up any place, find something inspirational, or you can start from the front, read to the back, or you can start at the beginning, which strangely enough is at the back of the book. So yes, please feel free to have a look at it. The website is www.ihelpu.co.za, and it's ihelpu, IHELP, and the letter U, ihelpu.co.za. You're welcome to visit the website as well and just see what the company is all about.
Yeah, definitely will do. Would like to thank you for having made time and coming. This was very inspiring and eye-opening. I'm already seeing how I can also contribute. I'll be starting a graduate program for unemployed graduates. So I'll liaise with you from time to time on how I can be able to do this better. I think this is something that most of us can be able to, contribute towards. So thank you so very much for having made time. Any closing remarks? I can't get enough of you explaining, and yeah, that was inspiring.
Tembi, I think from my side, thank you so much. I really appreciate the invite. I really appreciate having the opportunity to discuss these things. I'm hoping in terms of people that were on the live Zoom meeting that they find some inspiration, or that it triggers some thought. Every single person that's listening, every single person that's going to listen to the broadcast afterwards, once you've done your magic, they're more than welcome to reach out to me. I'm always open to other people's views, input, discussions. I'm always happy to mentor. I'm always happy to provide advice. So by all means, reach out to me.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for making time. This is Are We Transforming? I think the conversation today was saying to us, it starts with us transforming so that everything else can become, be what we want them to be. We really appreciate you having made time, and those who are going to be watching this video, thank you so much for making time and watch the video. I believe you're going to learn quite a lot. You can follow us on LinkedIn. We are We Transforming, and also on Facebook, Are We Transforming? And then on YouTube, we are We Transforming with Thembekile Felicia Makubele. You can like and subscribe, and then we're going to share with you the videos that we have had since July, I think the 30th, when we started this year. And we hope that you're going to be learning quite a lot. Thank you so much, and have a lovely late afternoon. And thank you also to you, Mr. Kruger.
Thank you, Tembi. Thank you really, really much. And I wish you the best of luck with your venture. I think it's really great work that you're doing here.
Really appreciate. Thank you so much.
Thank you.